Hi, welcome to Westlake Crash Course History.
Portugal edition.
I'm John, and that's Green.
Thank you.
Here we go. Portugal had a lasting impact on South America, especially Brazil.
Some lasting impacts were religious,
A new religion introduced to Brazil,
a new system of government,
a monarchy,
economic gains,
sugar and gold,
and social ones.
a new hierarchy.
And you're going to learn all about it here on Westlake Crash Course History. So Portugal settled in Brazil in 1532 along the Brazilian coast.
The lands along the coast that were given to nobles were called capitancies.
Now the Portuguese king held the ultimate power through governors, which would continue throughout Portugal's colonization of Latin America.
And a man named Pombal acted as a prime minister for Portugal's colonies. He expelled the Jesuits, eliminated contraband, gold smuggling, and tax evasion.
During Pombal's reform, he also abolished slavery in Portugal so that Brazil could have more slaves for their sugar plantations.
So basically, the Portuguese king ruled the Portuguese colonies in Brazil without being there.
Now on to the economy. In the 16th century, sugar was almost the entire economy of Brazil. It was grown in the northeast and was in such high demand because they were basically the only people who produced it.
However, after the 1650s, the sugar industry started to decline. World prices of sugar were down, and the French and English were growing sugar in the Caribbean for much cheaper.
After this, the economy of Brazil just declined. People resorted to subsistence
Green. This continued until 1963, when gold was discovered in Minas Gerais, a mountainous interior region near the south of the colony.
Later in the 18th century, diamonds were discovered in the same region. Oh look, it's time for the open letter.
Wait, Green, first you have to check the secret compartment.
Right.
Oh look, sugar! The main export of Portugal, until the Europeans destroyed that. Green, what are you doing?
Oh look, it's time for the open letter.
To the Portuguese guy who accepted the Treaty of Tordesillas. How did you not recognize that you were getting a terrible deal? The Spanish got everything and you got a tiny sliver. Why would you accept this terrible offer?
The first line was made by Pope Alexander VI of Spain. Did you not think that he would want to give Spain the most land possible? You moved the meridian to the west, but not by much. You could have had so much of South America if you only known how terrible a deal you were getting.
With love, John and Green.
Not only were the Portuguese stupid, but they were really religious.
The religion they brought to Brazil was Christianity. They brought it through the Jesuits.
Not the Jesuits, but the Jesuits.
God. By the year 1580, most of the natives of Brazil had converted. Over 100,000 had turned to more stable religion than the indigenous religions they had.
But Pombal was jealous of all the publicity the Jesuits were getting and decided to expel them from Brazil. Jesuit had been the main religion in Brazil for 210 years, but Pombal didn't care.
So from 1750 to 1777, Pombal was the head of authority instead of the church. Many schools declined after the Jesuits because they were in charge of the schools, especially the really good ones.
Aldeias declined as well because they were run by Jesuits. And if you don't know what aldeias are, then maybe you should read more. Aldeias is a Portuguese term referring to an Indian mission village.
Jesuits. The Jesuits not only protected the Indians, but also helped the African slaves. And when the Jesuits were expelled, the control of the African slaves were given to the monarchy, which was bad for the slaves.
No way.
Green? I don't want to hear it. There were many new ethnicities in Brazil and new races.
Not right. Okay. They also had a stratified hierarchy.
And they had many more African slaves coming over, which led to them breeding
Male African slaves. There was many different racial groups and ethnicities that were schoolly-pooping, creating miscegenation.
The blending of Native American, African, and European peoples resulted in a new American culture.
Now to the thought bubble.
And now for the thought bubble. During this time of colonization in Portugal, people were acting like savages.
Yes, both sides, colonists and natives, treated each other disgracefully.
The colonists would scootily poop with Indian women without mutual consent, and then enslave the men. It wasn't until the Jesuits forbid slavery that these natives were treated better.
The colonists acted this way because most of them were prisoners from the bottom of society and they thought guns gave them power over people.
But let's not forget what the Indians did to the colonists, Green.
Oh yes, didn't they eat some guy?
Yes, they did, Green, because they were being treated so poorly, the natives decided to not welcome the colonists anymore, and in one special case...
Indians were also just as savage as the colonists. At one point, the Indians captured Pedro Fernandez Sardinha, the first bishop of Sao Salvador, when his ship wrecked offshore. They attacked him and then the natives proceeded to eat him.
And that's the thought bubble.
Boule.
As you can see, Portugal has made a lasting impact on South America, especially Brazil.
Economically, the only gains Portugal received were from sugar, gold, and diamonds.
In the world economy, when prices for goods started to get cheaper, Portugal suffered.
Brazil showed the first time that Portuguese king picked up his throne and moved it over to Brazil due to the rebellions. He didn't physically pick up his throne, okay, but he left the Portugal to rule in Brazil over Portuguese territory.
Brazil also introduced a stratified social order and the blending of the ethnicities. And it also showed that slavery was still prevalent and would continue for centuries to come.
Religiously, Jesuits improved life for the natives and had converted a great number of them to Christianity before Pompey expelled all Jesuits.
Thanks for joining us on Westlake Crash Course History Portugal Edition. Doing? Where's my hair? Stand!
Twerk.
That's not the line either. Stand! For Doug Husband. Thanks for joining us on Westlake Crash Course History Portugal.